We first need to appreciate that creation is something from nothing. Before creation, there's only God. Now, human beings, therefore, cannot create or destroy, even though we use these words. When we create, it's not out of nothing. We're taking that which exists, and we, with intelligence, combine these components to make a beautiful painting or a complex computer, but all of the elements existed before we came along. We can't make things disappear either. We break them down. We can split the atom, and lo and behold, unleashes incredible power. And the atom is not the last address of reality either. The subatomic particles, we don't make them disappear. We just break them down. We combine and we separate. Creation is something out of nothing, which is something we cannot conceive. Because when I say nothing, and you already conjuring something, well, that's something. Right. All we can say about nothing is it's no thing. But you can't describe it, because if you do, it's already something.
Right, like when you say I made it from scratch, you didn't really invent the part. You had this.
You played with the form. Right. You played with the form, the actual substance. Right. Nothing original there. Nothing. We extract, we combine very cleverly, and endless, almost endless combinations, producing the endless objects, components of the world. But nothing there, in essence, is novel. Actualizing potentials, that's all we're doing. Yet Hashem creates out of nothing, which we can't even imagine. Because you can't imagine nothing. It's fundamentally unimaginable. Something from nothing is still nothing. So how does it exist? Because God is willing it, or talking it, metaphorically speaking, into existence every moment. Hashem is consciously aware of and willing and creating every molecule and subatomic particle of existence every nanosecond, and even because if it didn't, it would fundamentally disappear, because it has no intrinsic reality. It's out of nothing. God's the only reality. This truth of creation is fundamentally impossible for us to imagine or understand. Here we are existing in the created reality, but objectively, it all starts with God and nothing else, not the possibility of anything else. Again, there's no space where he isn't, and yet he's brought it into being. So this is what Chassidus explains. I'll make a statement like this. Does the world exist? Says Chassidus, no. It's being existed. It's being brought into existence. So does the world exist intrinsically? No. It exists because God wills it to be. We're a consequence of his will, nothing else. A simple example, and it's fundamentally flawed because it's an example from our own experience, is if I would ask you now to conjure the image of your home in your head. So you close your eyes and you think of your head, and there's an image there. Now, is there a picture of a house in your head? Yes. Is that separate from you? Is it something else? No, it's my will. I'm thinking about it. That's why it's there. When I stop thinking, it disappears. Now, it's a flawed example because the house does exist outside your head, and even after you stop thinking about it, the memory, it's in your cells, you thought about it. But it gives us some indication of it only exists while I am thinking about it. I stop thinking about it, at least externally, it disappears. So, is there a house in your head, an image of a house? No, the truth is, there's me conjuring the image of a house in my head. No house per se. It's my will to think about it that the house is there. But Chassidus actually brings the following illustration. The flying object. So if I take this cup and I throw it, and while it's sailing through the air, I ask you, is the cup flying? Is the cup flying? What would you say?
If I saw it flying, I would say yes.
Yes, so you're correct in saying the cup, well, it actually is flying, but is it flying?
Right, you're saying is the cup in itself flying? No, because
it's being flown. So both things are true. It's flying, but actually it's not contributing to its flight. It's actually fighting its flight. Truth is, in some way, it is. It didn't have any mass, it couldn't fly. But externally, it's fighting it. But there's velocity that's carrying, literally wrapped around the cup, and then gradually dissipates in the arc, and it falls to the ground. So it isn't flying, it's being flown, but it's acting like it's flying. So likewise, creation exists, but really it's being existed. Every moment, it's all out of nothingness. Its reality is, the reality of everything is, you are a consequence of Hashem's will. That's the end result. There's nothing independent of God whatsoever. God is because He is. There's no because. If you ask the word because, He is because He is. Everything else is because He wants it to be. So now the question is, so God's the only reality, and everything else has absolutely no intrinsic truth, no independence, has no identity unto itself. It's merely the consequence of His desire that it be. So who's choosing? Who's choosing? My brain, my heart, everything that I have, He's constantly creating. How can that possibly, number one, it is not real in having its own independence. Then for sure my choices aren't, because that's all part of Him constantly creating. So it really pulled the rug. Not only are we asking, do I have free choice?
But He created us.
But I'm being created every second, and every thought that I have, He's creating. Now let's revisit that in a moment. Is there an I to begin with? Every fiber of my being is being constantly created by God. It has no reality unto itself. So there's nothing else, and certainly no choice, and for sure no choice against His will. And yet Torah says we do. So how can we possibly make sense of this or reconcile it? So in the same way that at the end of the day, the fact that creation exists, only God can do that. And He created us. He created us with His sense of independence. Let me make my question stronger. This is really the core of the question. How can we not feel, this is the question in Tanya, how could we not feel totally dependent on God? Now that pat answer, God hides Himself, makes no sense. I can hide myself from you because I can take an object that's not me or you and put it in between my face and yours. You don't see me. But there's nothing outside of God. There's nothing behind which you can hide. Everything is Him. Everything is Him, meaning to say the consequence of His will, and it has no reality unto itself. So what do you mean God's hiding? What does it mean He hides? He can't hide because there's nothing to interpose between Him and anything else. So this is what the Alter Rebbe is hammering home or explaining in Tanya. In the same way we can't understand or even imagine creation out of nothing. And let's just make clear also, to create something out of nothing, it's not a bigger miracle to create a grain of sand, or the whole universe. One's not a bigger miracle than the other, out of nothing fundamentally. So, in the same way we can't imagine and understand creation, we can't even imagine pre-creation, what does no thing mean? So too, similarly, because only God can create out of nothing, we cannot fundamentally understand, the mind cannot grasp, how He can hide Himself from creation where there's nothing outside of Him to create. And that's the meaning of Hashem Holikim. That's what those strange words mean, because on the surface, God, He is Lord. What is it saying? Yud Kei Vav Kei is God's creative power. Elokim is God's power to conceal Himself from creation. It's all equally Him, and therefore, because it's God, totally and fundamentally beyond the canned box of creation itself. In summary, in the same way we cannot picture or understand or duplicate creation out of nothing, similarly, the same thing, we cannot duplicate or understand why we feel this sense of independence when we're really not because he's the only reality and there's nothing other than him? How does he conceal himself from creation? How does creation not feel that it's nothing other than him when that's the truth and there can be nothing that can get in between? All to say, therefore, all to say this. When we ask the question, do we have free will? Since we are starting with we, that's a given. We don't question, I'm here. Answer, yeah, you do.